Baltimore City Council is now in session pursuant to RCW 42.30.110(1)I. The City Council will now enter into executive session to discuss potential litigation. This executive session is slated to last 45 minutes until approximately 7 p.m. No action is expected.
Mr. Vanderland, I see that you're online. This is Anastasia, the clerk. Are you hoping to speak today during business item B?
No, I don't expect to.
Okay, so we're going to treat you as a viewer. Thank you. Hi, Dawn. This is Anastasia. Can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Try again, though. You were faint.
I can. Can you hear me?
That's perfect.
Thank you.
Kenmore City Council has finished our executive session and now adjourning the special meeting and calling the regular meeting to order. Would the clerk please take the roll?
Councilmember File,
Present.
Councilmember Kugler,
Present.
Councilmember Shrubnik,
Here.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane,
Here.
Councilmember Baker,
I am present.
Councilmember Marshall,
Present.
Mayor Herbig,
Here.
all present.
Next, I want to read our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the city of Kenmore is situated upon the ancestral lands of the Snohomish, Snoqualmie, Sauk Suattle, Duwamish, Stillaguamish, Tulalip, Suquamish, Muckleshoot, and other tribes who are part of the Coast Salish people. We recognize and express our deepest respect for their enduring stewardship and profound relationship with this land, which they have cherished and protected since time immemorial. We honor the First Peoples, acknowledge their vibrant culture, and commit ourselves to learning from their wisdom in our journey to promote justice, equity, and mutual understanding. We pledge to stand alongside these communities in acknowledging past injustices and working towards a future that respects and celebrates the diverse heritage of this land. Would you all please stand and join me in the flag salute?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Unless there are any objections, the agenda will stand approved as published. Seeing no objections, the agenda is approved. Next, we have a proclamation for Native American Heritage Month. Whereas Indigenous peoples, the first people, are culturally distinct ethnic groups who are native to North America, which was later colonized and resettled by other ethnic groups. Native Americans are descendants of the original indigenous inhabitants of what is now the United States. And whereas we acknowledge that the city of Kenmore is situated upon the ancestral lands of the Snohomish, Snoqualmie, Sauk Suattle, Duwamish, Stillaguamish, Tulalip, Suquamish, Muckleshoot, and other tribes who are part of the Coast Salish people. And whereas during Native American Heritage Month, we celebrate the rich tapestry of Native peoples and honor their sacrifices, which we recognize as inextricably woven into the history of this country. And whereas notable contemporary Indigenous leaders and dignitaries such as Deb Holland, Sharice Davids, Mark Trahant, Winona LaDuke, and Rebecca Nagel continue to make significant contributions in politics, arts, law, and social justice movements. And whereas Native Americans have moving stories of tragedy, triumph, and perseverance that need to be shared with future generations. And whereas Native Americans have enriched our heritage and continue to add to all aspects of our society through their generosity of culture and continued practice of teaching economic, environmental, and cultural sustainability. And whereas the city of Kenmore is committed to participating in dialogues led by tribal communities around the opportunities in the areas of self-determination, sovereignty, and cultural preservation to create an active government-to-government collaboration. And whereas the city of Kenmore acknowledges the significance of land recognition as an initial step towards honoring the original stewards of the land and fostering a more inclusive community dialogue about our shared history and future. And whereas Kenmore City Council celebrates October 9th, 2023 as Indigenous Peoples Day, recognizing the resilience and strength of Indigenous people who have had an immeasurable positive impact on our community and society. Now, therefore, I, Nigel Herbig, Mayor of the City of Kenmore, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim October 2023 to be Native American Heritage Month throughout the City of Kenmore. And we have Coast Salish artist Ty Juvenile to accept the proclamation. Do you want to come up and say a few words? Sure. Thank you very much.
So my name's Ty Juvenile. I'm a Tlaib tribe member and the artist for the story pole. And when I was outside, I was trying to think of what to talk about. And when I was looking at the history book you guys have out there, the only thing that kept coming up was history, you know. That's what we're doing right here. That's what we're participating when we make these pieces, these community pieces like the story pole over at the hangar. We're participating in history. These things are markers in time. And that's why I always try and leave something for the community to put their mark on, you know. That's why I kind of left a spot for the community to put their mark on it. They're part of that history. They're going to remember that day when they were there. They're going to be able to go back and look at their thumbprint again and say, we were there. And that's what a part of our culture is remembering family, community. And I'm very thankful that Kenmore took the time to accept just Coast Salish culture, tribal culture all together, and to make this proclamation. So I'd love to accept it on behalf of myself, Tulalip, and all the Coast Salish tribal peoples and everyone else. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And why don't you join us over by the flag for a photo?
Okay. Thank you.
Next, we have a presentation, proposed ordinance number 23-0595, accepting funds for the purchase of a Hank Aaron mascot costume, presented by Deputy City Manager Stephanie Lukash, Senior Civil Engineer Kent Vaughn, and Kenmore Heritage Society President Suzanne Greathouse.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of the council. We have with us tonight another guest that wasn't mentioned, Hank Heron. Hank Heron is our official mascot of the city and was an invention of Kent Vaughn, our very own city employee, years ago now. And we've been talking for a long time about having a mascot costume. This item should probably be under where's the fun, because won't it be fun to have a mascot at the farmer's market, at movies and concerts? And The Kenmore Heritage Society has stepped up, and we're so grateful for their donation of the majority of the funds to purchase a mascot costume. There were also businesses in Kenmore at the Kenmore Business Alliance who came forward and donated funds toward this, as well as some individuals. So we're really excited about the fact that we have now officially, as of today, have raised all of the money and the checks are in our finance department's hands. So with that, I want to turn it over to Kenmore Heritage Society President Suzanne Greathouse, who has been the key player in getting us to this point.
I think we may need you in a microphone for our remote viewers.
Right here?
That's perfect.
Okay. So when I was meeting with the city to talk about what we should do for the birthday party, I was surprised that we didn't have a mascot costume already. And I found out that there had been some interest in finding the mascot costume a while back, but it never took any wings and flew anywhere. So Heritage Society decided to make it fly. And I told them that I would wear a turkey costume to the fundraising meetings to get things going, which I did. And KBA came up with a chunk of change, and Heritage Society did as well. So we're hoping to get Hank on board before Thanksgiving so that he can help me with my Tofurkey campaign. And then he'll belong to the city and can be out advertising for the community. So I appreciate you accepting this.
Your microphone on?
Susan is the big player who brought this forward to us and really made it happen. And also Janet Quinn did a lot of work behind the scenes.
So there is an ordinance before you, and so we'll conclude the presentation and then we'll come back at that time for further discussion or if you have questions.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager, geez, back there. Where's the fun? All right.
Oh, this looks pretty darn fun. What happens?
All right, so oftentimes, or actually not often, but whenever we do a big capital project, we celebrate it, right? Think about the bridge or the opening of a park or new sidewalks. We usually do a ribbon cutting to celebrate. Well, what about when we accomplish something significant that's not necessarily so tangible? It's not like a physical thing. Like what if we adopt the DEIA policy and strategic plan? Or what if we do a big organizational effort to revamp our personnel policies and our administrative policies and adopt a code of ethics and things like that? What do we do to celebrate that? Well, usually nothing. Well, we changed that. And we had an all staff meeting last week, and we decided to do something to celebrate the really hard work of my coworkers in developing some really important policies that are fundamental to our organization. So we held a ribbon cutting for documents. Have you ever heard of such a thing? So here we are. This is you guys adopted these policies a few months ago, but we also did some follow-up administrative policies and procedures that were a lot of work. And so we held a ribbon cutting for our administrative policies and personnel policies and procedures. And so Michelle King, our deputy city clerk, because she had such a key role in all that, she got to cut the ribbon. So, and that's our organization right there for you. And we were all at Rhododendron Park. And so right after that, just moments later, we did another ribbon cutting for the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Accessibility Strategic Plan. And there's Garrett cutting the ribbon because he had the lead role on it as our staff. So is that unique or what? And it was our way, our internal way of celebrating a lot of work. So there's the fun.
Well deserved. All right, next on the agenda is public comments. We welcome our community members to the council's meeting. In this forum, the council does not engage or dialogue with the public. The primary role of the council is to listen. We will hear from our on-site guests first, followed by our virtual guests. If you're online, please use the raise hand feature now if you would like to speak. All guests must address their comments to the mayor and city council. The clerk will acknowledge your request and call your name when it is your turn. Your time will start when we confirm that we can hear you. Please state your name and city of residence for the record and keep your comments to the allotted time. We will not split your time with others or reset your time except by express approval of the presiding officer. Screen sharing is not allowed. You can submit materials to the council or clerk in advance. Please do not comment about pending development projects on which the council will make future decisions, as those are quasi judicial matters and the council members must limit their communications about such matters. This meeting is being recorded. Thank you for taking the time to express your comments. Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. We'd like to hear from the following guests on site first: John Culver, Pat O'Brien, Katie Rhodes, Elizabeth Mooney, and Peter Lance.
Good evening, council. John Culver, Kenmore. Once again, you really do love to see it. A courageous and storied Kenmore community institution getting their hard-earned flowers. Salute to Arts of Kenmore for finally earning local arts agency designation. This is a critical step for making more public art projects happen in Kenmore and will open the door for many more opportunities in the future after the requisite moratorium period to get some protocols in place. Thank you to the city for taking action on this. A roaring heck yes as well to acquiring a 6-foot-tall Hank the Heron costume. Thank you to the generous donors. Now, in consideration of the privilege and the honor bestowed upon someone lucky enough to serve as the city's inaugural mascot, let me take a civic engagement lens here. How would I go about nominating someone from the floor to fill that post? So technically this isn't my news to share, but Planning Commissioner Tracy Bonashinsky has been privately telling supporters that she is, quote, definitely considering it, according to one anonymous source. Also, I'm just going to keep plugging the Salmon Recovery Survey. Visit kenmorewa.gov. Look for the fish. Only takes a minute to fill out, and I encourage you to support Rapid Progress Plus. It's a sizable step in helping our sick river get healthy. And speaking of healthy, folks can once again visit covidtest.gov starting tomorrow to order 4 more tests for free. Mass e-bikes now and golf carts too. That's all I got. Happy Monday.
Pat O'Brien, Kenmore, Washington, in a more sedate state today. I think I got rained out. You want to talk about climate action plan later in this meeting? Well, I got news for you. Until I hear that you folks have read the 35 documents that Janet Hayes supplied and can answer questions about the toxicity that's at Lake Point and in the navigation channel, and you understand and can read a detailed necropsy report on why that sturgeon died. Was it dioxins? Was it lead? Was it PCBs? What was it? We need to know that. That is fundamental to having any kind of a climate action plan, because we've got a dead, very unique fish that is here to tell us a story. And Elizabeth Mooney was the one that found the fish, and she told the story, and people want to know why that fish died before there's any more dredging. And some of you are unaware that there's a plan to designate any dredging non-significant and to dredge without testing. And I don't see how anybody thinking environmentally or knowing how that fish died, or the reports which I just supplemented more stuff from the EPA. We have over 150 documents that outline the toxicity, the dumping, the history of that site. And we want somebody to interface with. It's so bad, the communication is so bad that the asphalt plant started up earlier this week. And the last I heard is the asphalt plant had failed 4 of the 5 tests to get re-permitted. I get an email from the new owner. Who the heck are they? How deep are their pockets? What kind of fines can they pay? Did the previous owner of the asphalt plant shuffle it off their, oh geez, they could come back and bite us list? I mean, what are the resources of this? Where is the title, the change of title ownership? Where is the city's say in whether or not they can get off the hook and resubmit under a new name? There's nothing like that going on in the city. And we've got asphalt pumping out just as bad as it was before they applied for the new permit. And we've got nobody watching the hen house, which is big rolling asphalt fumes coming off of there, and a real misunderstanding of when did they pass any new test. Why wasn't the public notified, and why wasn't there a public process when there was a change in ownership? Thank you.
Good evening, City Council and Mayor. My name is Katie Rhodes, and I've lived in Kenmore for 45 years. I would like to make a land acknowledgement to God, the creator of heaven and earth, the owner of all lands. He made from one blood every nation of mankind on the face of the earth that we all might seek him. He has promised that if we ask, he will answer. If we seek, we will find. And if we knock, the door will be opened. So never give up on seeking the good and asking for strength and love and wisdom to walk it out. And we're not going to agree on all this because we know in part and we see in part, but we keep seeking. In the years I've been praying for Kenmore, one word in particular was given for us, which is, Kenmore shall be a city of life. When I consider the coastal Salish name for this land, which as best as I can pronounce it is Taquadis, I read on the city's website that this translates to a place where something is grown or sprouts. This also speaks of life. This encourages me that even before the full revelation of eternal life through faith in God's sacrifice for our atonement, and this is the Day of Atonement, our Creator foreshadowed the gospel among all nations to prepare the hearts of all people to receive his life, his love, his liberty, all through faith in his Son, Jesus, our Savior. So God bless Kenmore, a city of life where good things sprout and grow. Thank you.
Hi, Elizabeth Mooney, City of Kenmore. So thank you for fixing the culvert on 61st on what the Lockwood kids helped call Chitchatel, Little Creek. And I'm here to support the culverts being fixed as fast as possible. We want salmon back in that stream, coho, in addition to kokanee, et cetera. But what I want you to hear tonight is that we want you to fix the culverts fast, put the money in there, make that decision, because it's more than just fish. It's about storm events. There's a clear cost in not fixing them and hoping you don't have a flood event that takes out a bridge or kills somebody or floods a home. So it's about public safety and reasonable preventive maintenance. So also, you don't need to charge the retired residents, but don't worry about that. Fix that later. Don't cobble them together. First, decide to do it the soonest, and then we'll find a way to take care of everybody fairly. That's what I highly recommend. Sorry I missed the survey. Surveys don't work for me. I'm watching grandkids, and I'm eyeball to eyeball tonight. So anyway. Secondly, and as important, is Cal Portland wants you to let them dredge what's called the berthing channel. The berthing channel is where the big barges come in for heavy industry, for asphalt and cement, in case you don't know. It's not owned just by Cal Portland. It is also partially owned, as I understand it, by the owner of the Lake Point Kenmore Industrial Park. It is super complicated. And one of our residents who has tried very hard to explain that there's a data gap in our shoreline master plan from years ago that Janet Hayes, Ann Hurst, and I tried to explain there's a data gap. She has sent 35 documents. It's too much for you to read, but we are happy to try to explain to you why we don't want you to give a permit to Cal Portland to dredge the little bit that they want to dredge until the other people, agencies, make sure that we test comprehensively for contaminants of concern. If you want to know why, we'll work with you. It's not going to all happen at once. But those barges, when we helped with the 520 bridge, churned up the silt. The silt does have contaminants of concern that drift into the navigation channel, and that is beyond the berthing channel. So the asphalt plant started up again. They say that they passed their tests. Puget Sound Clean Air Agency has not looked at the results yet.
Hello, my name is Peter Lance, longtime resident of Kenmore. I'm coming to you tonight to discuss the climate action plan and the updated transportation documents. They are incomplete, and they're incomplete because you had a transportation plan, and we have a huge amount of material that comes in on the barges, the sand and gravel, every day, and there's not even a piece of the transportation element for the city or part of the discussion. We have a climate action plan where we're presumably trying to reduce the carbon dioxide, the greenhouse gases that are emitted by the city and our actions. And we are also presumably going to play well with our neighbors in the community. We also have in the City of Kenmore's council priorities, continue to seek opportunities to complete a successful Lake Point project, which to my way of thinking is code for closing down the industrial waterfront. You've all received a letter from me in the past, but you have several competing issues here where shutting down that industrial waterfront may very well lead to a big boost in greenhouse gas emissions, almost without fail. I can't find a gravel pit in Kenmore to replace the materials that are coming in here very efficiently by barge. And this serves our community, which is commonly referred to in the climate action plan, where we're supposed to be good players with the community. That would presume Seattle, Lake Forest Park, Briar. And if we shut off, strangle their access to sand and gravel and the products that come from that, we are not being very polite without understanding what is really happening here. If you succeed in shutting down and implementing an opportunity for Lake Point, and that all goes away, and you don't understand what you're doing through the Climate Action Plan initiative, which kind of obligates you to understand what is going to be the effect on the environment, greenhouse gas emissions, traffic on the local streets, all of which I think are going to be very considerable. And I hate to accuse the council of going forward with willful ignorance, but I'll leave that up to you to prove me wrong.
Mayor Herbig, there's no additional guests signed in to speak on site. Can we move on to online comments?
Yes.
I do see Vicky Grayland raising her hand. Vicky, we're going to promote you in a second. If there's anyone else wishing to speak and you're online, please raise your hand now. We'll take the comments in the following order: Victoria Grayland, followed by Stacy Valenzuela. Vicky, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can, go ahead.
All right. Thank you for the renewal of the land acknowledgement. It's another example of a mistake by Rob Carlinci that was corrected by the city council. So thank you for doing that. Another example of his incompetence. I've been afraid lately from the speakers at the city council that our city was going to the right and being anti-LGBTQ. But the people of Kenmore voted so well in the primary. They renewed my faith in my fellow humans. So I want to personally congratulate John Culver and Karina File for their primary wins. I also want to say how much I support Patrick O'Brien, Elizabeth Mooney, and Peter Lance in their comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Grayland. Stacy V, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I turn on my option to see me, but it doesn't be on tonight. But Stacy Valenzuela Kenmore. Seems you have long lost the majority of engagement, as your outreach seems to be to those that only go along with the city priorities. Too many of my neighbors continue to state Kenmore doesn't listen, doesn't care, they just do what they want. This is continually supported by numerous adoption of issues after several residents come forward and email in opposition. Most of the Spanish businesses listed for the missing middle engagement, I feel, are not even patronized by our Spanish community. Are all income levels even included in engagement groups? These tactics of your missing middle without including all income and all affordability levels we have plenty of market and bonus rate housing. Our residents are being priced out. Kenmore most vulnerable locals are being priced out to homelessness, causing stress, which causes illness or death, or people are contemplating harming themselves. Are there, excuse me, I lost my place here. The money and the funds by the millions are going towards fun, recreation, and employees. We need our residents not to be overtaxed, not to be priced out, but supported by affordable housing and keeping our locals housed here in town. We need to support remediation of all of our contaminated sites. What is there, 35 or so? Saving our trees, our air, our water and land before it is too late. We hope you will finalize the climate action plan, put money towards that, and stop wasting money on all these other things. We also hope that the affordable housing and the workforce housing are funded before all the millions go towards public works, as well as any more dollars to ruin and contaminate Tolachadis. It has from the beginning had feces levels, and we don't know what other dioxins, because that's not even being tested since the changes were made there. How can that be that that park did not have any feces until, like stated from the public, that building a bridge over to the secluded island would have an effect on that? And it's proven yet again, as the hundreds of times that our public residents have been right of coming forward with concerns and hoping you would listen and that you would take action to follow through on what they are trying to educate you on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Grayland. Mayor Herbig, there's no additional hands raised.
All right, I want to thank everybody who took the time to come out and speak to the council. We really appreciate your participation. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. The chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second, and Councilmember File.
Motion from Councilmember Baker, second from Councilmember File. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda stands approved. Next up, business agenda. We're returning back to proposed ordinance number 23-0595, accepting funds for the purchase of a Hank Heron mascot costume.
So moved, Councilmember File.
I don't think we're quite there yet.
I'd second it, but if it's okay, but.
We don't want to take away our staff's ability to do their presentation. I think they still had something.
I agree.
I just wanted to say that we're so happy to be here. And again, just want to comment on the Kenmore Heritage Society and all of the donors who came up with the funds for this. It was a community effort, and it's one of the great things about Kenmore is our community comes together on things like this. And I also we said it before, but I want to acknowledge Kent Bond for his invention of Hank and the fun that it has brought and will continue to bring moving forward. And I did want to say, 6 feet is the tallest you can be to be in this costume. So I think, Mayor Herbert, you might be too tall, unfortunately. But anyone else on the
Deeply
council
disappointed.
who maybe Joe, I'm not sure, but anyone else who wants to be in the Hank Aaron costume, hey, I say welcome.
All right, any questions before we get to a motion? Okay, Councilmember File.
I recommend that we adopt the proposed ordinance number 23-0595, accepting the funds for the purchase of the Hank and Heron mascot costume.
Is that a motion?
It is my motion.
Okay,
Second.
we have a motion, and a second. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Marshall.
Some fledgling ideas can plummet and take a long time to take off. But I think this one is going to fly.
Councilmember Shrubnik, did I see your hand or no? Okay. Any further discussion? Would the clerk please take the roll?
Thank you. On the motion to adopt ordinance number 23-0595, accepting the funds for the purchase of the Hank Heron costume, Councilmember Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
Councilmember Kugler,
Yes.
Councilmember File,
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane,
Yes.
Mayor Herbeck.
Yes,
It's unanimous and the ordinance is adopted.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you.
All right, next up, Planning Commission recommendation on the climate action element of the comprehensive plan update presented by Community Development Director Debbie Bent, Climate Action Plan Program Manager Nina Rasmussen, and Planning Commissioners.
All right. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council.
She's just ignoring me.
All right, I would just like to introduce the group here before you, but my name is Richard Starr, I'm the Environmental Services Director. And I'm here with Nina Rasmussen, the Climate Action Program Manager for the city. And we would like to kind of present the first draft of the climate action element for your review this evening. And with us tonight, we have, I think, the majority of our planning commission who will also speak to the climate action element that's being presented to you this evening. And as Nina's getting set up, I just wanted to provide a few introductory words that this element is the first of its kind in the comprehensive plan. So this is a brand new element that's being presented to you this evening. And it was, the development of it was primarily funded through a grant from the Department of Commerce. And this was kind of an early implementation grant that we were able to jump on and take advantage of. And, you know, having a very proactive council with climate action has kind of put us in the forefront. So as you recall, we've also developed a climate action plan, which was adopted in May of 22. And for a city of our size, we're pretty early adopters of that, as well as this climate action element. I was actually sitting in earlier today in a listening session with many cities around the state, kind of getting feedback for Commerce on how this first implementation has gone, as well as the next round of cities getting in line to start this. And I didn't realize how actually
kind of early implementators of this, we really are. So I thank you all. This was really been driven by the city council to get these done. But that being said, just providing a little context for this evening, in a perfect world, we would really get these long-range plans and our long-range visions kind of done first, and then we would dive into the climate action plan, which is kind of more of our implementation measures. So as you're listening to the feedback provided by Planning Commission and reviewing the comments that we've provided from entities such as Department of Commerce, just kind of keep that in mind. This is really the 20-year long-term vision that we want to set for the city. Well, we recommend that you review and provide direction that this is these are the goals and the high level planning that you would like to provide for the city. And the climate action plan is really an implementation tool for this. But that being said, the climate action plan is consistent with this plan. We've made sure of that as you review the materials here. So I think we're all ready to go now. So I'll quit stalling here and pass it over to Nina Rasmussen.
Thank you, Richard. So I will just give a little bit of a background. Richard covered most of that here, but since this is a new element, I will just give a little bit of background on the purpose of this, as well as the general categories of the goals, objectives, and policies that are included in this draft element, the implementation strategies that are part of that document as well, and then the review process of the element and our next steps as we move forward. So as Richard mentioned, this is a brand new element. There was legislation that was passed very recently. So now the Growth Management Act requires that municipalities include climate considerations in all of their comprehensive plan updates. And again, we are on the forefront of this work. So we have been working with the guidance that Commerce has provided as it has been coming out. But the overall purpose of including this element is that it solidifies those climate action considerations in the city's long-term planning. And this element serves to provide an actionable framework for a lot of those actions. And that will be, again, implemented through the CAP as that tool. As Richard mentioned, we did make sure that the element is consistent with the climate action plan. There are no points within the element that there are any sort of conflicting goals or anything of that nature. So in development of the element, we did contract with Cascadia Consulting to do a lot of the background legwork in putting this together and make sure that it was adequately researched. So they began by basically assessing a lot of our reports, inventories, regional policies, and other tools that were available to ensure we could get a good baseline of where our focus areas should be. In addition to that, us along with Cascadia looked at the existing comprehensive plan to ensure we could really see where those gaps in policy might lie and where we would have an opportunity to really flesh out some of those spots that could include climate considerations. So once that was completed, we were able to develop those goals and policies during sort of a first round. We did that through identifying any existing policies and goals that the city had, making sure that was incorporated into this draft, as well as using guidance from the Washington Department of Commerce. We wanted to make sure that we were following along with their sort of measures and guidance and making sure that we were able to meet all of those state requirements and fill those gaps adequately. So lastly, we were able to vet and refine those drafted goals, and that was done through conducting city staff interviews. Cascadia performed an equity assessment. We received plenty of public comment on the drafts of the element. And we also have been working very closely with Planning Commission to ensure that we got a lot of really quality feedback in drafting this element for you today. So that brings us to its current iteration. And since this is a brand new element, there are 15 new goals. And normally during an update, we would present anything new being added or any significant edits. However, everything is new, and so it would be a bit unreasonable to go over each and every goal that is laid out in the element. But I did want to note that each goal does fall within these two categories, those being mitigation and resilience, which are generally seen as the two pillars of climate action. And so mitigation being the actions and strategies that directly reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So that would include things such as reducing vehicle miles traveled, increasing energy efficiency in buildings and homes, and also taking a look at our land use practices, promoting areas where we can enhance carbon sequestration. Resilience, on the other hand, is more community focused. That is where we are looking at the impacts of climate change and making sure that our community is prepared for those things that might come down the pipeline. So in that sense, we are looking at environmental justice, making sure we are bolstering that and being equitable in our approach. We are also wanting to ensure that our infrastructure is adequately maintained and repaired so that that is resilient to extreme weather events and natural disasters. Additionally, we are wanting to, this includes actions so that we might engage our community and make sure they are knowledgeable about those risks and potential climate impacts, especially to our more vulnerable groups. The second part of the element is the implementation strategies. And again, these also fall into two main categories. Monitoring and evaluation is the first one. And so this is kind of assessing the work. So this would be updating our greenhouse gas inventory, our vulnerability assessment, and providing those updates to council on a regular basis. The plan development and updates, that is more so where the climate action plan comes into place. So the climate action plan acts as the main implementation tool. And this is this section where this is the work. So this is everything, how it's going to be implemented, everything to reach those goals. So the CAP acts as that tool, and it is updated on a 5-year cycle. So it will incorporate any new strategies that are brought to the table in a more timely manner than the element itself. However, also in this section, we do specifically lay out other elements in the comprehensive plan where climate considerations are incorporated. That way we are making sure that climate considerations are touching all aspects of the of the comprehensive plan and being very explicit about that. Lastly, there are new processes, plans, and strategies that are laid out in this implementation section that are not currently included in the CAP document. So this is anything that has come up more recently than since the CAP's adoption. So that would include things such as an environmental justice audit process, an urban forest management plan, and a bicycle priority network strategy. All things that we have identified would help us move us towards those goals. But again, they were not called out in the CAP, and we did want to make sure we are including those in order to move this work forward. So in reviewing this element, as I mentioned before, we did receive some public feedback in order to get it to this point. And that did involve an online open house that was done at the end of May. And then there was also a public hearing that was held during a planning commission meeting at the beginning of June. Since that feedback has been incorporated, it has been approved by Planning Commission to move forward for council's action. And since that approval, we have gone through the SEPA review, or State Environmental Policy Act review, and received a determination of non-significance, which means that there is no significant adverse environmental effects that would be expected from the implementation of this element. And we have also received approval from the Washington Department of Commerce in its current form. The next steps would be City Council review. You will have an opportunity to have further discussion and review of this element at the October 9th meeting. And beyond that, the next step would be ordinance adoption once any further direction has been given to staff. And with that, I will hand it over to our Planning Commission, and I believe Chair Dwight Thompson will be starting things off.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Your Honor, Deputy Mayor O'Kane, and all the council members. Tonight, we have all 6 of our commissioners on the Zoom. There is our Deputy or Vice Chair Vanderling is around, and Commissioner Quadre is up there. There he is. And then to my left is Commissioner Banazinski, Commissioner Lutzis, and way down there is Commissioner Wyckoff. It is our pleasure to unanimously transmit for your action the climate action element of the comprehensive plan. I would like you to know that we, as a planning commission, have reviewed and approved all objectives and all goals individually in this element. There is quite a bit of policy for you to consider here. Several of the commissioners will talk about specific highlights. We want to stress, and when I say we, that is all of us, we want to stress that with full funding or a plan to get to that point quickly will allow the city to meet the action parts and outcomes desired of this element. Tonight, Commissioner Banazinski will address that aspect. We are affording you language to direct implementation sooner than 2050. I say language, and we'll explain that in a few. And we believe that language is critical. Commissioner Lutzis will elaborate on that point. We are very concerned about community resiliency and concurrence with citywide policies and ordinances such as housing and transportation, only as an example. Tonight, Commissioner Quadre will speak to those items. Finally, to finish up here and to answer questions that may be left over from the last time we met, I think it was a week ago, is Commissioner Wyckoff. So please see policy 3.3.3 that spells out in those 9 letters, golf carts, as an option to be looked at. He is ready to answer all of those questions, and I hope he has a good time with that. So unless you have any questions now, so that we don't have a long night, we will start with Commissioner Banazinski.
I'm Tracy Bonashinsky, Kenmore Planning Commissioner. Honorable Mayor Herbig, Honorable Deputy Mayor O'Kane, and Honorable Council members. It was a pleasure and an honor to work on the draft climate action element with Planning Commission Chair Thompson, fellow planning commissioners, and the City of Kenmore staff, and with important input from our community. The work Planning Commission did to arrive at the recommendations before you was important and time well spent. Once you have adopted the draft element with any changes you would like to see, the City of Kenmore will have climate action integrated into our comprehensive plan to complement and guide the climate action plan that you adopted in May of 2022. As important as it was to spend the time we did on all the important words in the draft climate action element, it will be for little without robust funding and toothy enforcement. It is outside the purview of Planning Commission to offer recommendations on specific funding mechanisms, and as such, we did not deliberate on possibilities. However, we are unified in our belief that funding is a critical part of rapid decarbonization and accelerated ecosystem restoration, and that such spending in the near term will be a critical part of putting us on a less chaotic, more sustainable path. Although we are already living with a changed climate, there is still much we can do to stabilize it for ourselves and for future generations. While we are doing well locally with our climate work, we are also behind. The best time to have started this work would have been many decades ago. The next best time is right now. After adopting the draft climate action element, Planning Commission hopes that you will take the steps necessary to secure robust, stable, and enduring funding for the important work outlined in the element. Thank you so much for your time and consideration tonight.
Commissioner Lutzes.
Good evening, Kenmore City Council. My name is Nathan Lutzes. I'm one of the city's planning commissioners, and along with my colleagues here this evening, we bring before you the climate action element, which integrates the city's climate action plan into its long-range plan. The City Council has adopted for 2023-2024, their top priority is implementing the adopted climate action plan and promoting environmental stewardship, including water, air, forest, and habitat restoration and preservation. This is part of that process. This puts that climate action plan into the vision of Kenmore in the long range. But tonight I'm here to speak to you about why that long range view of that plan begins today and why there's such an urgency. In discussion with my colleagues along the way, we really did come to a consensus that there is a need for urgency with this plan. A lot of our language throughout has been changed. We decided to change to be more urgent in nature. You no longer hear attempt to achieve, you hear increase or eliminate these actionable items where we feel that there's a strong need to do this now. You also hear other places where we removed specific dates in order to open the door to achieving these goals sooner. No longer do you see 2050 mentioned throughout the document, although we do highly respect the city's efforts to coordinate with other local jurisdictions and municipalities to come together to achieve a date in working together to address this. But we felt that removing that date opens the door for us to be more progressive, more proactive in addressing this urgent need. One policy in particular, policy CA 3.3.1, discusses converting public-owned fleets within the city to zero-emission vehicles. And initially, it had been recommended that we set a date later on, something like 2040 or 2050. But we felt as a commission, I think this is a great example, that needed to be done sooner than later. Why wait to do these actions when we can do them now? And so we changed that to read, to convert these vehicles as needed to be replaced. It doesn't make sense to continue on the path that we have right now when we can do things sooner. So as a commission, we do urge the council to accept these recommendations, as well as recognize the urgency that we feel as representatives of the community when it comes to addressing the needs of our environment. And I don't just speak for myself here this evening. I think we heard it very clearly during the public comment period, is that the community feels this way too. There is a strong desire in protecting our local environment for a healthier community. There's a strong desire to meet these needs urgently, proactively, and aggressively now in order to make a better Kenmore and in order to create the best community that we can. Really, at the end of the day, this is what we're talking about here for the future of Kenmore. Thank you.
Just to take a breath here so that you're ready to take in some more information from us, we'd like to thank our staff for working very diligently through this. This is being a new element. Thankfully, you did a plan, so we had some policies to look at, but this was not easy, and we had new staff come on during this period. Thank goodness. And so I would like to recognize the staff and all the good work that you folks have done, and thank you so much. We could not do it without your help, and as well as this has been quite the group effort on all 6 of us, by the way. See, 6, there you go. By the way, we miss our 7th person, whoever that may be. So, but anyway, so with that said, I'd like to now ask Commissioner Qadri to speak his comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. My name is Saad Qadri, and it's been an honor to spend the last 8 months on the Planning Commission with my fellow commissioners. I want to thank the council for giving the Planning Commission a chance to address this very important issue. My apologies for not being there in person with you all. Hopefully the next round I will be there. Climate change is an issue that truly transcends political ideologies, and it's something that impacts every single person in our community and beyond. I'm proud of the city of Kenmore and this council for being forward-thinking in implementing and embracing a climate action plan, which I know the Planning Commission has spent extensive time in evaluating and making changes to. The entire concept and policy behind the climate action plan is to preserve and protect our community, especially our younger generation and the future generations to come from the climate crisis. This certainly is a crisis and is getting worse and worse unless we make changes in our way of living. This is the time for us to be as selfless as possible to help save our world and be a leader that other communities can follow. What I wanted to focus on this evening, just real quick, is community resiliency, and in particular goals number 9 and 10 of the proposed climate action plan. We have spent many hours in our Planning Commission meetings and discussing how we can build a resilient community that is prepared for the climate crisis that exists today. We strongly believe that in order to build resiliency, we need to strengthen the connection between the members of our Kenmore community and the vision the city has in regards to fighting climate change. So how do we build this connection with the community? Goal 9 of the climate action plan specifically states, promote preparedness, response, and recovery activities to ensure that all Kenmore community members are prepared for climate emergencies. It is so important for the city of Kenmore to be prepared to accommodate the increasing demand in emergency services resulting from climate change events. The city must educate all community members on emergency procedures so that everyone is aware of what to do and where to go in case of an emergency. We need to continue to encourage and educate the community about climate change. And I think we all would agree that a special emphasis needs to be placed on those who are most vulnerable to experiencing homelessness. I think all of us would agree on that. In goal 10 of the climate action plan, an emphasis has been placed on outreach efforts to improve community resiliency and educate residents of Kenmore to adapt to current and future climate impacts. We truly believe that education is a key component to this. We need to provide all community members an equal opportunity to be informed of climate impacts, influence policy decisions, and participate in enhancing the well-being of the community. Goal 10 of this plan further focuses on outreach and encouraging the involvement of overburdened communities who may not be aware of the climate crisis that is facing us. Outreach and education with an emphasis on the overburdened communities is what our goal is under Section 10 and throughout this entire climate action plan. Again, I want to thank the council for allowing me to speak today on an issue that impacts every single person in our community. I'm proud to be living in a community that understands the importance of climate change and has made it a priority. So thank you everyone for listening in today.
So our next and last speaker, and before I let Commissioner Wyckoff speak, I would like to, on behalf of all of the commissioners, thank you for entrusting us with doing this job for you, because I know that the next step of the job is not going to be any easier for you folks. So Commissioner Wyckoff, would you like to speak about your favorite subject?
So there we go. There we go. It doesn't light up. So thank you very much for listening to us and for allowing us to present for you this evening. And my apologies for not being able to make it last week. I would have much rather been here than washing dishes where I was. I bring to you the concept of legalizing golf carts throughout specified regions within the city of Kenmore. There are several benefits to this, and there are several communities throughout Washington state that are exploring it, and some have already ratified it and finalized the adoption. The one I was trying to think of earlier was Birch Bay. They tried that out, and it was unanimous within the first year of their 2-year trial period. Some of my points that I would like to put out there when considering this initiative would be that if we could take a golf cart to the grocery store, we would most likely go to the grocery store that we could reach by golf cart. If we could take the golf cart to dinner, we would stay within the community that would offer that availability of mode of transportation. It's also extremely inexpensive, very affordable. And I think a bonus that has come from some of our somewhat comical discussions amongst ourselves would also be that this corridor of density and along the highway that would be serviced by some slower back roads of safe speeds, of course, for operating such a vehicle. These dense housing buildings could offer loaner use of said golf carts, making your trips to the grocery store or to the Rite Aid or whatnot much more feasible, so that one does not have to take a grocery cart off the premises. You could simply borrow the townhome golf cart or the apartment golf cart or whatnot. Aside from that, one of the other benefits I've discovered is that the state of Washington has mandated that the city actually organizes the stickers to show certification of the modes of transportation. And so all of the funds for that little sticker showing that it meets the safety requirements by the state of Washington, which is a seat belt and a reflector and rearview mirrors, all those funds stay within the city. They don't leave the city. So you're able to collect and progress the initiative. Any questions on the golf carts?
Councilor Marshall?
Apologies, what was that reference to the policy number again? I think it spells something out.
Was it
3.3.3.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions on this piece before we move on to general questions? All right. Chair Thompson, are we ready to just go to general questions then? Or do you have more?
Excuse me?
Are we ready to go to general questions or is there more to present?
Yes, we're done.
All right, wonderful. Councilmember Baker.
So I have got a couple of questions I think that I've had from day one. I'm very much supportive of the climate action, but what kind of metrics do we have to show that we're making any progress?
Largely, that would be a greenhouse gas inventory to show an update on how our emissions are decreasing. That is largely going to be the biggest tell of how impactful these policies and actions will be.
Now, I've been told that we are going to be 10% lower by or more by 2030. Is that going to be verifiable?
Again, it would depend, we would do a greenhouse gas inventory and confirm whether or not we're achieving those.
I didn't quite catch that.
That's what, I mean, we would conduct the greenhouse gas inventory and then we would compare those results to the benchmarks that we've set for ourselves and measure our progress that way.
But
And those,
I think you were there and heard that it was going to be about 10% decrease. So have you got a baseline now that we can go and judge that?
so we did our first inventory in 2019, and then we're currently still getting data from several sources and running our 21 inventory. And then our plan is to run those every 2 years. So then we'll have 23, 25 each 2 years.
So you'll have new data within the next 2 years.
Yes, that's correct. And it will be updated every 2 years. We are working on a couple processes in-house that will speed up the data collection. We are making sure that that is going to be a quality collection point. So it is taking a little more time than expected. But yes, that we should be able to update that on a relatively frequent basis. In addition, there are some regional tools that we have access to. King County has sort of calculators that we can input certain actions that will show us projections of how far our emissions would decrease. Now those are estimates, but that will at least give us an idea of, making sure we are staying on track to meet those goals and seeing if we need to pivot or adjust or, add additional actions if we are not quite lining up with those goals that we've set for ourselves.
I guess I'm looking for quantifiable data because we are putting a lot of finances and time into this, which I think is very good, but I think we really need to see hard data. And I'm hoping that's what you're going to come forward with.
Yes, that is the goal through the continual greenhouse gas inventory updates.
That is a goal, but is that something that you're going to be able to deliver? I mean, there's a little bit of hesitation to be.
I don't know. I mean, the plan from when we implemented the climate action plan was to conduct the greenhouse gas inventories, which we will do starting in 2019 and every 2 years. With 21 in particular, it's been challenging. Some of the partners that we're working with and the providers of data, the pandemic has really thrown a wrench in some of the modeling. So there's a lot of, I don't like a better word, they're really looking hard at the data and making sure that we're capturing, like you said, we want it to be accurate. So but the pandemic really, especially with the transportation models, it's been slow getting data from some of our sources on that one in particular. But yeah, hopefully by the end of the year, we'll have that. And like I said, every 2 years afterwards, it's will be provided as to measure our benchmarks.
If I may.
I
Your
guess,
Honor.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
One thing that was pointed out early on in our staff's presentation is that you, the council in this city, are at the point of the spearhead. You have taken on a climate action plan when many other cities are still struggling with the words climate action plan. And that's significant. So by getting out here, getting the plan, getting the element, your staff are working all the time at trying to get the best tests and the best measurements that are going to be coming out anywhere in this county or this state, or who knows, in the nation. Because I think there are several other cities that are very concerned about the same issue. So I can't speak as we haven't exactly discussed this, but as one commissioner, I believe that this will result in hard facts. And that's one of the reasons why we took off the, oh, let's do 2050 or 2030, because that puts you in a box. And maybe you want a better box or an open box. So I'm sorry, but I wanted to, because we have all discussed this on the commission.
No, I appreciate that, but you've been in government for a little while.
Just a little.
And there's been many times that I hear one thing and then we come back later, well, no, we never said we were gonna do it. We're gonna try to do it. And I'm just looking for some hard commitment. That you're gonna do it, that you can be able to show something. Whether it's 1%, whether it went up 10%. I'm just asking that you will show something. We are not dependent on what happens. We have 60,000 cars a day going through here. So that is, we don't have control of that. But anyway, that's my concern.
Maybe
Yeah,
I
Councilman,
can.
I mean, yes, Commissioner Lucis.
Councilmember Baker, if I may, to maybe address your point a little bit, is we have those firmer words that the commission put in where we took out the reduce or the attempt or do this. So it's more concrete where we say that we'll achieve these things, these goals. That's what we're putting forward for adoption.
Good.
And then in addition to that, what city staff has discussed is we do have numbers to put behind that. So we can tell you if we're going to meet that or not. So we have numbers and we have that firm language that we're going for.
Thank you.
And I will also just note that the greenhouse gas inventory updates is specifically laid out in the CAP and the element as those measuring points. So those are where we will be looking towards, and those are specifically laid out actions that we will be taking in order to do that measuring and that assessment.
The chair would also just remind the members that we're discussing the climate action element of the comprehensive plan and not actually the climate action plan. They're two separate but related things. Right now, we're discussing the climate action element of the comprehensive plan and not the CAP, which gets deeper into some of the questions I think Councilmember Baker was trying to get at. So that might be a better venue for that discussion.
Good, I get more chances.
Councilmember Kugler.
Okay, well, first off, thank you so much for, again, doing the deep dive into this element. I'm actually really pleased that the state is requiring it of all cities to incorporate this into their comprehensive plan so that we can have more progress collectively on our environmental crisis. I really appreciated the equity analysis that Cascadia did, and also the public input and responses that you all considered and addressed during the process of developing this element. I have a bunch of just like very small editorial comments that I'll just read, and then if you want, I can draft it in an email and send it to staff if that might be easier. So these are really just like just very small revisions. So on page 2, line 3, I think we're missing the word commerce there. Is this okay if I read these out? Okay. Policy 3.2.4. Oh, this is a question. Scooters were not included, I think, and are scooters not allowed in Kenmore?
What was the policy number again?
3.2.4.
I'm not positive if scooters are excluded in Kenmore, but I know that if you're riding a Lime scooter into Kenmore, it will stop operating.
Exactly. That's why I asked, because I've had friends try to ride scooters into Kenmore and they couldn't leave them in our city. Okay, so we may have to look at that. And then objective 4.1, I think should read as incentives versus incentivizes. And then policy 7.1.6, I think it's just missing a that after legislation. Those are just my very small editorial comments. And then for policy 12.1.2, I'm wondering if we might consider adding rain gardens. So in addition to drought tolerant plants, also rain gardens as an option, encouraging that among our community.
Your Honor, the Planning Commission has authorized staff to make any grammatical or functional corrections on their own, so they can fix the little guys, but we can't speak to changing words. We have now passed that to you.
Councilmember Shubnik?
Do we need to address any of Councilmember Cooper's points? Or, I mean, I'm good with them, but.
I believe most of them were small little grammatical fixes. There was the one in 12.1.2, was it? About rain gardens. Do we have any objections to asking staff to add language around rain gardens to that section? Is there any objection to that? Councilor File, do you have an objection to that?
No objection. We already recommend it generally.
Okay. Richard, do you think you might be able to add some
Yeah,
language?
I don't think that would be considered a substantive change. We can provide you a red line with that on the next draft.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, I did have other questions, but I didn't want to move on until we clarified that. So this is great. I'm super excited that we were out in front on this, and I think we are. I mean, we're in the early, the group that got the early funding for doing this, which is fantastic. And the public process was great. So all of that's terrific. I do have my usual. I tried to keep it high level because I think we're not adopting tonight, right? We're just discussing, right?
Yeah, we're just
Okay.
We're just giving direction because they're going to come back with this at a later date. for
Right.
our passage.
Okay. So I think, I mean, taking kind of a 30,000 foot view, you know, we've got, and there's already clearly some confusion even among, you know, this council, and I'm guessing in the public as well. You know, we've got these two documents that I'm just going to use a kind of a Venn diagram idea. And I think what I heard you say, Nina, I think, is, and I think this is right, is the CAE, so the element, is the broader policy document from which derived specific actions that are then in our CAP, our climate action plan. So that would have been kind of the normal way to do business. Of course, we went a little bit in the reverse, but they do align. They absolutely do align. And so the Venn diagram that I would expect is kind of, you know, you've got these broad policies, and then you've got more specificity and more stuff in the CAP. And that pretty much holds through this document, except in the resilience area, which is in the CAE and the element goals 7 through 13, where there's a ton more specificity in the element versus the CAP. So I'm not sure. My gut would say let's see if we can at some point very soon incorporate some of those issues from the element into the CAP, so that we have kind of a controlling implementation document that, you know, everybody can reference, and it is inclusive. So I'm hoping maybe we can do that. And then another big picture issue is kind of alignment with the commerce guidance that is Wow, that was lightning. Okay. Which is guidance at this point. I mean, obviously the rules aren't made, but there are a couple of things that stood out. One is, and you talked about it in the slide, is there's kind of two prongs. One is mitigation or greenhouse gas emissions reduction. So that's one prong, and the other is the resilience prong. And they talk about that in terms of sub-elements. And so I'm just wondering whether we might, just put in a kind of a subtitle, or, make the goals kind of goals of sub-elements or something like that, so that it's clear that, 1 through 6 are the mitigation, emissions reduction, and the 7 through 13 are the resilience. I just think organizationally, some demarcation of that would be helpful. So that's one piece around alignment with commerce. They also have a pretty detailed menu of measures menu of actions. I can't remember what it's called. I think it's measures. And it would be great to kind of understand how what we've said in there not only aligns with the CAP, which is more obvious, but how does it align with their menu? And specifically, they talk about these 4 pathways for describing your mitigation section. So again, if we have the 2 subcategories, it's possible maybe at the beginning of one, we have some discussion of what pathway we've chosen and how these align with the menu. So that's another. They did also, while they approved it, I mean, they were clear that they did want dates and estimated amount of greenhouse gas reduction, and there's a manual for how to do that. So I think that, I know that cuts both ways in terms of dates, but maybe we have a not later than or something. And it would be helpful to have the estimated greenhouse gas reduction piece, which we have in our CAP, but I think you could incorporate it here as well, because then that really emphasizes which pieces are going to leverage the most impact. And the final thing, and then I think in goal 1, this is my only kind of more specific policy ask, is somewhere in there, I think we should articulate, and it is a policy, that we go after and try to obtain external funding. And, you can be broad about where that external funding comes from, but I mean, that's a big piece of how, and maybe that goes in the implementation section instead of the policy. That's fine too, but I mean, I want to see that in writing. That's what we're going to be doing. And last comment is, and it's clearer in some parts than others, but if maybe just take an eye through each one of the policies and objectives and just say, okay, is it clear? Am I talking about municipal operations or community or both? And again, sometimes it's more obvious than others, but I think that would be helpful. That's it. I know that was a lot.
Councilor File.
Thank you. So I appreciate many of the points that Councilmember Srebnick brought up. It's very important when we're looking at our policy that we're looking at smart, obtainable, measurable, time-sensitive goals, right? So our goals and our objectives, it's very much a grounding piece in policy formation. And it's a basic element. We can make those to be stretch goals, which I'm pretty much in favor of, and be a little bit more flexible, that we do have a current council that sees urgency for climate action. That's why it's, number one on our council priorities and number two next year, but still in the top 5. So we do need dates. We do need deadlines. It's a part of basic policy formation. I do also appreciate some of the recommendations from the Washington State Department of Commerce, that we add some specific, some pieces. We already have a little bit of transportation goals, but I do believe we can add something in our AG or food sector now that we have both an eye on what's happening with our produce and restaurants, kind of businesses. They're a piece in the puzzle, right? And we are going to be having composting in our garbage, part of our sector. There's a way to measure that. King County's K4C has a good tool for that. And I believe what we were hearing earlier from part of our community was they want to see results of testing. And so when we're looking at, climate action, land, water, air, the gases, the off-putting of gases, and the changes of gases once they are warmed or cooled. We're seeing that in our environment locally. So we do need to add a few things to our plan, both the CAE and for goals and objectives. We just need to add some layers in. Also with mapping, if you're going one direction or another. So sub-bullets are great, but we can map those out too and find our way. That becomes part of our reporting process. And it's a key element in public health policy making. So I appreciate all the very long hours you had. Amazing work you have done, each and every one of you. I appreciate you. And the Wyckoff Amendment, I do like it. So I think we have options and opportunities, and I'm all for trying pilot programs that are proven to be accessible and workable elsewhere here in our local community. And you do have the support of your planning commission partners in that too as well. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
As a council who passed a climate action plan, I don't think we could have a better planning commission to put before us this climate action element. It's incredible. It's visionary and it is true leadership. I especially appreciate the emphasis on climate resilience in our environment. It's the direction that we truly have to go, not only in our city, but worldwide as we're working on climate action. One of my favorite pieces, I'm just giving you guys some thank yous here, but the support a resilient and green local economy is incredibly important. And just a reminder, and I know I mentioned this at last week's council meeting, but as we invest in the environment, the return on investment to communities is for every $1, you get $2 to $2.50 in return. And when we're looking long-term at investing in taking care of our watershed and our environment, what that also is, it helps to reduce heat centers. It actually cools our planet, and it's a long-term strategy that the sooner we get started on it, the better. And it's nice that this work ties into work that we're already driving towards, such as with the culvert program that we discussed last week. I'm really excited about this work. I can't commend you enough for what you put before us. I want to also echo what Council Member Shrevenick brought forward. I might not have been very loud about it when we passed the cap, but did feel it was a little light on the resilient side, and seeing the details that were presented today and the suggestion to tie them together more tightly, I totally support. I am really proud of your work here. And thank you, because you help us get the job done for something bigger than who we are. So thank you very much.
Said it last week, I'll say it again this week. We wouldn't be able to function as a city council without all the hard hours that all of you put in, and we deeply, deeply appreciate it. I think part of the reason why we might be the tip of the spear on this also is because last year after Representative Dewar's bill 1099 didn't pass, we at that point made the decision to try to make this part of our comp plan. And so we were ahead of the game when her bill passed earlier this year. So I appreciate all of just kind of diving into a new area and taking the cap and what was in there and translating it into comprehensive plan language, which is a bit of a science, a bit of an art, and appreciate all the thought that went into this, because there was it definitely shows a level of detail and thought that I really appreciate. Any other questions or comments? All right. Commissioner Lutzitz, did you have something?
Yes, Your Honor, just really quickly, since this was something I spoke on, and I know this question popped up a couple of times when it comes to dates. So I know we talked about the urgency of dates, but also just the comprehensive plan in general doesn't have a lot of dates in it by nature. It is a more long-range looking and more values-oriented thing. And I think when it comes to dates, the CAP has done a great job of including those dates into that actionable policy. So I think that was part of our discussion and part of the reason, not only the urgency, but it just, when it came to the overall view of the comprehensive plan, our other elements don't include dates like that either, just for that reason. It's more goal oriented and broader 10,000 level. But with, I think the climate action plan, that's the great spot that has a lot of that more actionable thing. But again, at the end of the day, it is the council's prerogative on what they want to do there. But I just thought I wanted to make you all aware of that when it came to our discussion behind that, because we did consider that.
Thank you, that's helpful. Councilmember Shribnick.
I think one thing that might solve the problem is there is a very brief section at the beginning of the element where you talk about the reference documents, including the CAP. And maybe that could be fleshed out just a hair more and say, you know, in the CAP, we talk about the specific amounts of greenhouse gas reduction for given elements and the timeframes, expected implementation. And I wonder if that might kind of solve the problem if we, and you could specify also that more that, you know, Venn diagram relationship aspect that might solve a few problems.
Yeah, and we can, I mean, this is a lot of great feedback. We'll probably have to go back and capture your comments and come back on October 9th, I think. And we can try and incorporate those or provide responses on many of these. And just regarding the dates, I'll just jump in as well, but I have, I guess, 2 points. So again, when I was in this regional meeting earlier today, Representative Dewar was there actually and listening in. And I was amazed at how many folks, they're just starting now. And so this element and this guidance is really geared towards folks who are, you know, learning what is a greenhouse gas inventory, where do we start, what's the first steps we should take. And so again, you know, we've done some things, you know, before other things and everything, but you know, that's when you're a real proactive city and you just want to jump right in and start doing it. It might be a little bit messy, but you know, I think that we've produced some really great work here despite that. So keep that in mind. And then with the climate action plan, so that is you know, a council directed plan that we can, you can decide how quickly you want to modify that, add things to it, remove things from it. Whereas in the element, so back to kind of some of Planning Commission's points, you know, you can say do something as quickly as possible in the element and then decide however you want to implement that in the CAP. But if you want to change it in the element, you know, that's a much slower process. Whereas in the CAP, you can direct us and we can do that quickly. So just that's also, there's the process part of the element that might be, if you want to make changes, take a little longer than perhaps putting those other items in the cap. So just throwing that out there as well. But yes, we'll, a lot of great feedback. Thank you very much. And we'll come back with incorporating it as best we can from what we heard tonight.
Your Honor.
Yes,
Well, if you are done with us.
I think we still, I think we still may have a couple more questions.
Oh, we still have,
I think a couple more popped up, so.
okay, then I'm gonna wait till the end.
Councilmember File and then Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Last thing is kind of looking at the elemental, the implementation strategies, and under the monitoring and evaluation, one, I'm hoping that we get a report out after each phase of these, right? But I wonder about the vulnerability assessment every 4 to 5 years. If we're getting a flag at 2 years, possibly, we're going to be needing to do a reassessment, right? And so I think we need a little flexibility plan in there, like 3 to 5 years. I am looking through kind of more of like a public health and sciences kind of strategy. And I'm happy to see the annual progress report, but I'm also concerned about the CAP implements policy direction outlined as it's updated on a 5-year cycle. Science and the evidence that rebounds into our community comes back pretty fast when we're talking about our environment and the impactors on our environment, vectors, gases. I think also we need to have some flexibility in there because policy is changing rapidly on these areas. And we see that's evident in 2, 3, and 5-year cycles. Anything on a 5-year is old science and it's usually often thrown out. So I think we have to have that flexibility, and the evidence is there to support that. So I'd rather see 3 to 5 years, giving us bandwidth should something come up. It gives us the opportunity to corrective action, corrective policy, and it gives us the bandwidth to be adjustable with that. And was there any reason to, in the CAE, the climate action element, to look at on the equity pieces? So of course we've adopted a resolution that racism is a public health crisis. I would hope to see that we're looking at racial cultural impacts in addition to the inequities and injustices. And yes, it does say for all, but we do need to be looking through these lenses in our community specifically. And this is part of the greater work, not just from the local and more macro level, but upward. We all have a piece to play in this, and it is measurable and easy to report too. We have great examples from King County and King County Public Health even to pull from. So thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
So in Kenmore, courtesy is contagious, and there was something I forgot to say. I really want to, in addition to thanking the Planning Commission for your outstanding work here, which I think this may be one of the days that I gave the highest praise to any Planning Commission presentation. That's how deeply I felt it. I want to thank staff, Richard, Nina. And I just look at, I was going to say it without seeing your heads. I can see the regard the Planning Commission has for your work on this element. And you too, Mr. City Manager. The team that we have here is outstanding, but I'm thankful that we were able to hire a climate action plan manager, and that we're able to do this work. So anyway, I want to make sure you're included in that praise. Thank you very much.
Any further comments? Chair Thompson?
Well, coming from all 6 of us, we're gonna miss not seeing you at the next meeting. You know, it's become like almost a habit. But fear not, you will see us for the last 2 elements of our docket come the 16th, and we just can't wait.
Our breath is bated right now.
Okay.
Looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
Good job, guys.
Unless there's any objection, we will be at ease for 7 minutes to 8:50. Just take a quick stretch break.
Right.
I would be much safer in the golf cart.
Yes, you would.
Yes.
Draw
Kenmore City Council will return
No, she didn't.
from being at ease. Next on the agenda, designated the Arts of Kenmore as Kenmore's local arts agency and review and processing of city-supported community projects presented by City Manager Rob Carlindsey, Community Development Director Debbie Bent, and Arts of Kenmore Director Sarah Salum Hayashi. Ms. Bent.
Thank you very much. So in July, Council asked staff to look into what the process was for designating Arts of Kenmore as a local arts agency. There is a memo in your packet which provides background information about what a local arts agency is. It provides information on our long relationship with Arts of Kenmore and the work they've done to promote arts in the community. And it provides some examples of how local arts agencies are operated in 2 local jurisdictions using different models. Also, there is a draft resolution included in your packet which would designate Arts of Kenmore as a local arts agency for the city. The benefits of being designated as a local arts agency, one of the main ones is eligibility for grant funding through the National Endowment for the Arts. The other thing is we can be sort of very specific about the role of Arts of Kenmore and the city relationship. The second piece is Arts of Kenmore provided funding options. They're asking for funding assistance to either fund 3 part-time positions, which would be an ongoing annual contribution of between 40 to 50,000. Second option would be to contract when on a project by project basis, and that would be a separate contract approved by council. Thirdly, to reduce the scope and services, and fourth, to dissolve and discontinue Arts of Kenmore. So in light of reviewing the funding options and also in light of recent community-led projects that were not on the city's work program, this has placed significant strain on staff time and resources for such projects, in addition to the strain on Arts of Kenmore for helping be the fiscal agent for some of these particular projects. So as such, the city recommends developing a comprehensive policy on citywide art and procedures relating to community-led arts and culture project. And so as such, staff recommends that there is a suspension of city involvement in community-led arts and culture projects until the appropriate and necessary policies and procedures are completed and adopted by the council. So if this is the direction, this is the staff recommendation, if council follows staff recommendation, staff would then begin working on those specific policies and bring those back for council consideration later this fall. And as such, if that is the direction going, staff would also then recommend that Arts of Kenmore's proposal for funding be deferred until after the arts policy is approved, after the procedures are put into place for how to lead a community-led arts and culture project. And again, further discussion would occur with the biennial budget discussion, which would be in the summer and fall of 2024. So that is the presentation and the staff recommendation, and we're here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Questions? No questions. So I think what staff is asking for, they're asking for two things: direction on whether to bring back a resolution designating Arts of Kenmore as a local arts agency. Is there any objection on the council to the staff bringing back a resolution designating the AOK as a local arts agency? Oh. Okay, seeing no objection, I think we're asking staff to bring back a resolution for that at a later date.
Okay.
And then two, they're asking for a motion to suspend review and processing of city-supported community projects until policies and procedures are completed and adopted by the city council. Councilmember Marshall.
So moved.
Second, Councilmember Pyle.
All right, we have a motion from Councilmember Marshall to direct staff to suspend review and processing of city-supported community projects until policies and procedures are completed and adopted by the city council, seconded by Councilmember File. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, would the clerk please take the roll?
On the motion just stated by Mayor Herbig, Councilmember Marshall,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane,
Yes.
Councilmember Kugler,
Yes.
Councilmember Shrubnik,
Yes.
Councilmember File,
Yes.
Councilmember Baker,
Yes.
Mayor Herbig.
Yes.
The motion stands.
Councilmember Shrubnik?
And maybe this is out of order, but I was looking at the packet and it looked like we did have a resolution for the local arts agency. Is that?
There is a draft in there. It would probably be better to bring it back so we can at least have the city attorney give a quick glance over
Oh, okay.
before it's placed
Okay.
on the agenda. This was just a draft.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, well, that was relatively quick. I apologize. Well, thank you very much to both of you. We really appreciate everything AOK does, and we look forward to continuing our long partnership with Arts of Kenmore. Thank you.
Thank you, council.
All right, next we have a public hearing, proposed ordinance number 23-0593, exceptional trees, presented by Assistant to the City Manager Garrett Oppenheim.
Good evening, council. I don't have anything new to present tonight, just here to listen to the public.
All right, I declare the public hearing open for proposed ordinance 23-0593. Madam Clerk, is there anybody signed up to comment?
Thank you, Mayor Herbig. We do have Dwight Thompson wishing to speak.
All right. Mr. Thompson will be given 5 minutes. Same rules apply as public comment. We appreciate that also.
One second, okay. Good evening, I'm Dwight Thompson. I live in the Sub-Summit neighborhood in Kenmore. I am not speaking on behalf of the Planning Commission or in my official capacity as its chair. I will comment on issues in that ordinance that are concerning me right now. One is that in the section that has how many trees can be removed per year, it goes from 2 to 8 trees per year based on the size of the lot. And it seems to me that that is not consistent with the whereas number 3, number 1, and number 2. So if only a third of the lots in this city were to cut this number of trees down or the like over 5 years, our tree canopy would essentially be gone. Exceptional trees or not. I just really think y'all, the council, needs to take a real look at that. I have a lot not my lot, somebody else's lot behind me, and the owner mentioned to me, well, we were told by the city we had to take these 2 trees down because it's within the drip line of this new addition that they're putting in. Well, let's not worry about the addition right now. 2 large conifers. So I was just thinking it had not, even if it had nothing to do with the permit, he could have cut those 2 trees down anyway. And then my second thought is about, you have all these tree units, and those little trees that are put in to make up for those large conifers or that sequoia that you all know about don't even come close for at least 10 years or longer to the storage of our greenhouse gas reduction goals. So coming from another city that all of you know of, I just believe that you folks should just go after this and look at your tree canopy and do not let just someone just cut one down because they want to, or 2 every year because they want to. Large trees that would be important to our tree canopy. So I'm going to stop there because that really is my #1 concern in this whole ordinance. I'll look for something else by the time I get back here for the next hearing, but I promise I'd be less than 5 minutes. Thank you, City Clerk. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. Can we check in with our virtual guests?
Of course.
Is there anyone online wishing to speak? Elizabeth Mooney or Jim Myers? Here we are, 1 second. Jim Myers or Elizabeth Mooney?
Where's my little, I just don't see my face. Oh, no, you're starting. I can't see you, or I can't see if you see me, but I am here. Oh, here we go.
We hear you.
Hello. I think I'm here with you. Start video. There we go. Just so I'm eyeball to eyeball with you all.
We hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, so this is Elizabeth Mooney. Good to see you again. I just want to fully support what Dwight Thompson just said to you and just get back to the drawing board with this. I know Dwight Thompson from having some great relationships with friends in Lake Forest Park Stewardship Foundation. And I've spoken with our council members on occasion about what Lake Forest Park has done with their density and keeping up trees. And I've had just short conversations with our mayor about how to proceed into the future, saving trees, increasing density. And I know it's a complicated situation. However, we have time now, and I think we should just start at the beginning, bring people like Dwight Thompson into a conversation, and we start rewriting this, get more people involved. We've got climate change happening. Those little trees that are supposed to replace the giant ones, they're not even going to be able to grow in the increasing temperatures, to get to be a 50-year-old tree. So let's work with our new climate action, Nina, and our council and our citizens, and save more trees, and even become more of a save the tree city than Lake Forest Park. We're lucky that Dwight Thompson moved here from Lake Forest Park. And I think we need to welcome that spirit, that wisdom, and turn Kenmore around into being, the heavy industry city that has the asphalt and concrete on its shoreline. And instead, since Kenmore has even larger streams than Lake Forest Park, not to compare anything, but maybe we should be comparing ourselves to our sister city and do a lot better at our stewardship. I also have had some conversations recently with Jim Howard, who used to be on the Planning Commission, and we talked about what's going to happen to these exceptional trees. And even if we had a good ordinance about our trees, it appears from these conversations, and I haven't read everything, so I want to learn more and help change this, but it appears that some of the wording that says should will allow developers to do what they want to make a big buck and cut down the trees because it does not say shall preserve, I believe it's like an exceptional tree. So I think we need to go back, think more about our future, our environment, our trees, our tree canopy, and make ourselves even a better tree saver than our wonderful neighboring city, Lake Forest Park. But we should be thanking them for their example, for prioritizing trees over extreme density that cuts down trees and lets developers come into the city and make more money instead of first protecting the trees that's going to help us live a healthier environment. We have streams that will benefit from both protecting our trees and getting even the schools involved in mapping the trees in their neighborhoods. So make it fun, but I fully support what email Jim Howard sent to you, council members. And I just think that Dwight Thompson's comments tonight are heroic and should change your minds, and we start over. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. There's no additional hands.
Is there anybody else wishing to be heard? Anyone else wishing to be heard? Anybody else wishing to be heard? That I'm declaring the public hearing closed. Next, we return to the business agenda. Item D, missing middle housing, Final report and findings presented by Community Development Director Debbie Bent and Principal Planner Todd Hall.
Good evening, Council. So I have a short presentation this evening to present the findings from the middle housing engagement process that we conducted earlier this year. And in June, the consultant was here to present the findings, but we didn't have the reports. So the agenda includes all the final reports, and there is a lot of work there. And I am not going to go through those page by page. You will be relieved to hear. So what I will be doing tonight is giving a quick overview of the state legislation that was passed earlier this year on accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, and middle housing. We'll be looking at some implementation considerations. We'll look at the findings from the outreach that was conducted, the findings from the community-based organization outreach, and the findings from the racial equity analysis, and also look at next steps. So the state law that was passed earlier this year with respect to accessory dwelling units requires that 2 ADUs are permitted on all single-family lots, but you may restrict ADUs on lots that contain critical areas. There is other regulations that would prohibit owner occupancy. You must allow an ADU on any lot size. It legalizes the sale of ADUs as condominiums and must allow separate sale of units. And there are limitations on parking spaces. So based on this new state law, it will require the city to amend its regulations on ADUs to be in compliance. The consultant did some preliminary analysis looking at the residential zones, R1, R4, and R6, looking at lots that were located outside of critical areas. And on the map on the screen, the critical areas are shown in blue. So you can see that there are significant areas of critical areas in the city. There was an assumption that these lots would be outside the critical areas, and it is assuming a 50-foot buffer. Again, once we get into this, likely next year, this is very useful information for us to review. There are going to be some, we'll need to take a look at some implementation measures. We'll have to look at whether we, for example, we want to change setbacks to encourage detached ADUs, whether we want to do something outside of the land use regulations, like a permit-ready ADU program to make permitting and design easier for homeowners, whether the city should encourage different combination of 2 ADUs in different areas. For example, we could still allow ADUs on critical areas, but maybe there are different regulations that need to be in place. How to assign housing capacity to ADUs based on implementation of the law. So moving right along into what the law said about middle housing. For a city with a population of less than 25,000, you must allow at least 2 units per lot. A city between 25,000 and 75,000, in addition to those 2 units per lot, you must allow 4 units per lot within a quarter-mile walking distance of a major transit stop. And 4 units per lot if at least 1 unit is affordable housing. Again, this law would not apply to lots with critical areas and buffers. Again, the consultant did some mapping of critical areas, some look at where those major transit stops are, and those would be along 522 based on the definition in state law. Use this information as some background information as we develop regulations moving forward. So some of the things we would do, some of the policy decisions going forward for implementation. The city is close to 25,000 population, so we'd have to sort of weigh how to implement. Do we put the policies in effect in the comprehensive plan, for example, to allow, once we get beyond 25,000, do we just implement the regulations for being under 25,000? These are questions that will need to be answered as we move forward. And for areas within cities where 2 units per lot are required, you have to allow 6 of the 9 middle housing types, and ADUs do not count as a missing middle housing type. I put this slide in here because, as you know, for the middle housing concept, as Opticos has presented, having access to commercial development to support housing is important. So there was some preliminary analysis done as part of this work about potential areas where it might make sense to look at neighborhood commercial business. So again, this would be a separate work program item in the future, looking at where neighborhood commercial might make sense. And the consultant did this preliminary analysis, which we could certainly take as we move forward. So part of this middle housing effort was public engagement. We did a lot of public engagement in 2022, and council was very interested in continuing that engagement process moving forward. And we did several activities to try and engage the public. We were also very interested in reaching voices that we may not have heard in this conversation. We held a community event at the downtown plaza, and we had some engaging activities for the community to look at what types of dwelling units they would like, where they would like those units to go. And I think there was a lot of support that middle housing was a step in the right direction, and particular support for duplexes and cottage housing. There was also concerns expressed from the community about maintaining green space, traffic, and impact to neighborhood tranquility, to name a few. We also did a small group activity online, and this is where we had, it was more of a community conversation, and we wanted to have this to sort of have that conversation with community members who may have differing perspectives. These were very well attended. And again, I think there was overall support for middle housing, and there's similar concerns that were raised in that larger community event. We also did a very quick survey. This was not intended to be a statistically valid survey. This was one quick tool to get a very quick analysis about middle housing. And so you see the results presented on the screen there. There were quite, I would say, the extent was more for ownership response to this rather than rental. But you can kind of see that the difference in response was if you were a renter, that you felt that there was not sufficient middle housing. So it does differ whether you rent or own in terms of your perspective on middle housing. There was certainly, I guess, some consistency being close to transit, and maybe some kind of consideration about what kinds of zones. Again, when we were doing this engagement, a lot of this was occurring before the state made their decision on the new regulations. A part of the grant was that we had was we gave money to East Side for All, and Arch managed that contract. And this was specifically to look at community-based organizations, and 5 cities participated in this effort. I would say this was a unique effort in engaging community members who you probably don't hear from as much. And I think that I would say pay close attention to these results. They did a fantastic effort on reaching a diverse range of ethnic and social communities in a variety of ways, including a survey and some hands-on approaches. And even though it was not specifically targeted to Kenmore, I think the results from the community-based organizations still ring true for Kenmore. And here is, I know it's very hard to read here, but and the full results are included in your packet. Interestingly enough, do you support having middle housing in your city, even if you may not be able to afford it? And in Kenmore, 63% said yes, they do. Interesting, another question there was, do you support middle housing in your city, even if you may not be able to afford it? And I think it's interesting that the lower amount of income, the more support there is, which is probably not surprising. And then support for middle housing by current housing situation. Again, I think there's strong support from renters, but even on the home ownership, there was still 57% support for adding additional housing for middle housing. As part of the grant requirements, there was a requirement to do a racial equity analysis, and this was to look at policies in the comprehensive plan to make sure that that they were evaluated in terms of displacement risks, and a tool was presented to analyze policies going forward to make sure that when policies are put in place, that displacement risks, particularly for housing, are minimized, and that there is a priority for investing in people and places that need stabilizing in the community. So moving on to next steps, and that's a lot. So there, again, I don't intend to go into all the reports. You have those in front of you. There's some great data there. So we applied for a commerce grant to assist with development of middle housing regulations. So if we're successful with that grant, that will help in developing those regulations. In January is when staff brings forward a recommendation for the 2024 docket work program for council approval. And it's very likely that the staff recommendation will be to amend the land use and housing elements of the comprehensive plan, because the ones that you adopted last November are no longer consistent with state law. So we have to do some amendments. And we'd also then be recommending that concurrent with that review of the elements that we would bring forward implementing zoning regulations for middle housing and ADUs consistent with state law. And if we have time to add into that mix, looking at small houses on small lots. I know cottage housing was popular. Whether we'll have time to do that next year, I'm not sure, because in addition to looking at the housing and land use elements and these implementing regulations, we also have to finish the other elements of the comprehensive plan to meet the state mandated deadline. But it is included, it would be included as a future docket work program item, in addition to looking at supporting neighborhood commercial. So that's where we are. Quick overview. Any questions?
Questions? Councilmember Final.
One, I know this was an amazing amount of work, and I really appreciate you for the work put together. On the analysis summary page, I just want to go to that slide. It's page 9. I want to highlight something that I would like to have seen within that drawing of what is within a quarter-mile transit. Is another indicator for where are the HOAs, since they're exempt and these according to the state law on this issue. So this would help reduce confusion within our community and better support the relationship we have with our community members and the trust in local government. I really had hoped that we would be looking at cottage housing as well. I know this information was all sent back to the Planning Commission for some feedback back in hopes that we would see more housing types come back to us. I know today we're just reviewing the summary. But I have to say, I am very supportive of our housing solutions and housing availability at all types, all levels. Specifically, one of the questions you asked today is, where do we go from here with our population is basically about 24,000, right? And then looking ahead, we're on the cusp of the 25,000, but we have a housing crisis within Kenmore, and we know we've had issues of neighborhood gentrification. Our seniors are in the same place of housing market as downsizing as our new incoming folks and purchasing their houses. So they're competing in that same market, making it more difficult to get into a housing market. So I think what we do now is really important. Well, I absolutely support the state law's recommendation around the 2 units per lot at least. I think that's important when we're talking about the ADUs. I believe they gave some clarification around square footage too, that we do need to correct in relation to our code. But looking at where do we go? There's a part of me that wants to say, let's wait until we hit the 25,000 mark for that 4 units per lot. And I do not want to wait next year or the year after to see cottage housing come to us, because the studies that we had been researching and looking at and reviewing along with Sound Cities Association and Hoppenheim and whatnot, it shows that affordability comes at quads and up, not at duplexes and triplexes. It comes once you hit that fourth piece of real estate. And you can't deny that data. So I have to go off the data. I'm really happy to see that we have the carve outs here and we're thinking about community, but the idea of may impact, I don't believe I want to give a open door for a environmental impact with may, and cities may. I'd rather say we shall not in Kenmore. I think we've been very clear about our environmental dedication to our community and keeping our community safe for future generations to come, let alone the sensitive areas within Kenmore's borders. So I'm going to just start and stop there on that piece. And at least with the survey and a community survey and feedback, I was really impressed with the strategy of outreach and the approach and the layers of different approaches with our community. And I want to applaud our staff and faculty who took time with our community to pull out the data. Thank you.
Councilmember Shumnick.
Yeah, one comment and one question. Thank you for this great work. The comment is that in the public feedback, public engagement process, it did look like cottage housing and small homes on small lots was a theme, and I didn't see that really highlighted in your summary. I would concur with Councilmember File that I really hope this comes up in 2024. I mean, I've said this every year for 6 years, and council members before me said it before that. So I am, really wanting to honor all of those years that folks have been asking for this. So that's the comment. The question is, I'm trying to reconcile slides 6 and 8. And slide 6, Bill, 1110 missing middle, that says if you are a city of 25,000, between 25,000 and 75,000, we're almost at 25,000, that it's two units per lot, and then 4 units, within the quarter mile. But then the 2 slides later, it talks about, let me just see if I can get to it here. Yes. For the third bullet, for areas within cities where 2 units per lot are required, 6 of the 9 missing middle housing types must be allowed. And only 2 of those are less than triplexes. So those would be cottage housing and duplexes. So the other types are all 3 units or more. So I'm just trying to figure out, are those 6 types that you get to choose from of the 9 required in all of the areas that 2 units are required? So in other words, the whole city, or I guess I'm a little confused.
Yes. So comments are coming out with guidance, and these are some of the questions that we're hoping will get addressed, because there are some conflicting things in the law, and we're looking at what we have to do. So I think the question is 2 units per lot are required. The question then is it's 2 units per lot and 6 of the 9 must be allowed. I agree. There's some sort of
Where
disconnect
though?
there.
Yeah, right, exactly. Okay, yeah.
So that is one of the questions that we're hoping to get some clarification on when the guidance comes out.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Just for clarification on the population for your consideration. So every April 1st, OFM, that's Office of Financial Management, comes out with population estimates. And I'm currently working on the economic development element, so I've been pulling new data. And as of right now, the current estimate is just shy of 24,500, so 24,500. So just for consideration, we are very, very close to 25,000.
Councilmember Baker.
Yes. Cottage housing. Kirkland defines cottage housing as, I believe, 1,650 square feet, 3-bedroom. Is that what we're defining it as?
Well, first of all, I don't know off the top of my head what Kirkland's regulations are. And when we develop cottage housing regulations, we would be developing our own cottage housing regulations based on what is right for Kenmore. I've heard from a couple of council members that they're hoping that cottage housing we can get to cottage housing regulations next year. And that will certainly be council's prerogative when approving the docket. But it's going to come down to the amount of resources and time that we can get to these things. So we'll see what we can do.
So we're below 25,000.
Correct.
We have to allow 2 houses on our lot, 2 additional houses on our lot. Did I understand that correctly?
At least 2 houses per lot.
So at least 2, not 3.
And you're talking about House Bill 1110? Yes.
Okay, so then I can build theoretically 1 more house on my lot at 9,800 square feet.
The regulations would allow you to do that. It's not going to force you to do that, but the regulations have to be in place to allow it.
Okay. Then I have one more. Come back to me. I'm not going to waste any time.
Okay. Couple of questions and comments. I noticed on the map that showed the frequent transit or major bus stops, or I can't remember the exact designation. I noticed there wasn't a circle where the park and ride is. It just seemed like we were looking at Uplake, or 60th and 68th were the 2 places circled. Is there a reason why the park and ride wasn't included in that?
It was just based on the definition of state law for what a major stop is. But we can check again to see if the park and ride is a major stop.
It would just surprise me
Yep.
if 61st was a major stop and somehow the park and ride was not, but
Yep.
okay.
We'll check. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. 2, just given the amount of staff time and probably planning commission time that's going to have to go into some of this over the next couple of years, I would strongly encourage us to just plan ahead for the 25,000. Going through this exercise twice, I think, would be an enormous waste of staff and planning time and planning commission, and frankly, council member, just time and resources. So I would really encourage us to just, peel the Band-Aid off, as it were. Yeah, that's all I have right now. Councilmember Fowl? Oh, wait, sorry. Councilor Marshall?
Thank you. We have shared core values that we see throughout these materials. And I'm struck by how they're also shared by the Planning Commission's original recommendation and the sentiments of a large portion of the community that came out to public hearing, and that they were stated pretty succinctly, I think it was the equity survey where they came back: preservation of green spaces, number 1. Number 2, building supportive infrastructure, which of course has to include sidewalks, which goes into 3: walkability, sidewalks, and transit. Those values, I think, are going to be our main challenge in how to carry them out and balance all these competing interests. And then the question I had for Ms. Bent, do you have any idea how much or what among these tasks would be parceled out to the commission versus the council?
Well, it's again, council approves the docket in 2024. If we are suggesting doing concurrent review of the comprehensive plan policies with implementing regulations, that would go to the planning, all to the planning commission with a recommendation back to you.
Councilmember File and then Councilmember Baker.
Thank you. Gosh, Councilmember Marshall said it well in talking about routes, and particularly direct routes. We talked about this at the retreat as we are having development, and along with this development, we're going to be really needing to implement that layer in there. You know, when we're looking at people-oriented places and really thinking about planning our community, one of the things that came up was heights, right? And you presented it on that. We've heard different things come from consultants, you know, more cubic building styles, you know, our communities also provided feedback on that. That's not exactly a very attractive element for municipalities often. But I am hoping that we can continue to look towards those green spaces. And whether we need to look at rooftop ordinances with that to come to us. And I know that's part of some other plan that's being worked on right now, whether they're businesses or park spaces atop. We really do need to be thinking about these things together. So I want to see that come through. And also, I can remember our Deputy Mayor O'Kane really well. When this all went back to you all, we were to hear more housing types come back. I'm starting to just look at what's going to happen when we plan out another year and then a policy rolls out after that. We're probably talking 2026, 2027 for cottage housing in Kenmore. And I really hate to see such a delay with such a high demand and such an important need in our community. I don't believe we have the luxury to continue to wait so long.
Councilmember Baker.
Yes. Can I please get a definition of missing middle housing?
A definition?
Yes. Is that an 800 square foot house? Is that a 1,500 square foot house? Is that a house that's selling for under 500,000? Is it a house selling for under $1 million? I mean, I just don't know.
Well, I'm not going to be able to give you specifics, but I can tell you that middle housing is something between a single family home and an apartment. It's the range between those two things, like a duplex, a triplex, and cottage housing. It is typically cheaper than a single family home because it is typically a smaller footprint. The size of the smaller footprint and the cost of that home, I don't have an answer for you right now. The land use regulations will put in place things like height, lot size, and things like that. It will not dictate price.
Yeah, we can't. One thing is, once we get over 25,000, we will allow 4 units per lot if at least 1 unit is affordable.
Yes.
So then on my 9,800 square foot lot, I could theoretically put in 4 houses if one of them was affordable.
Theoretically, and if that's what the regulations say, when those are adopted, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions or comments? Councilmember Kugler.
Is staff seeking feedback on applying for the Commerce Grant at tonight's meeting?
Yeah, that slide is just slightly outdated because at your last meeting, I
Yeah.
believe that was already granted. So I submitted the application to Commerce at this point. We're just waiting to hear back from them, and all accounts is that jurisdictions that apply are going to get awarded. So, but yeah, it has, you as a council did authorize the city manager for staff to submit that at that same week, and I did submit that, and so now we're just in the waiting period.
Great, you answered my follow-up question, which is what if we don't get the grant? But it sounds like it's highly likely that all will get it. Okay. And then another, I guess, just some, like a request or feedback for staff, and that is because of the amount of changes that have occurred since we first started talking about missing middle housing, I feel like we'll need to keep up communication to our public. I'm not sure if they are all aware that the state law was passed and what that means for Kenmore, and especially because we're on the threshold. I appreciated you linking to all of the additional documents, because I went back through the PRR summary report where they talked about the tipping point framework and continuing to do public outreach through like relationships and ongoing adaptation to change. And so I think that constant communication about just that we're still working on this, still discussing it, still going to tackle it is essential.
Yeah, we do have I'm just checking, we do have a missing middle website. So it looks like we could update that page and add some of the new information and have outreach that way.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember File.
I hate to raise my hand one more time, but I wish we could call this housing solutions, because that's what we are talking about here, is housing solutions to fill the gap. And it seems to be far more accepted by community than missing middle housing, because people tend to be triggered by this accumulation of words. But I do know that, like the Affordable Housing Council, for example, they've moved to housing solutions as a more receptive framework for working together with community, and it's being well received. I'm hearing that elsewhere as well. I think that we can grow our communication and continue to work together with our public. I do know that building heights have come up a lot of concern recently. We've seen a lot, of course, on social media and whatnot. We've done a lot to protect the carve-out area, thanks to the recommendation of Mayor O'Kane and Tracy Bonzewski, Planning Commissioner. So I think when we're looking at the heights in that area, I just want to say, I think we can look towards those different heights, buildings, even building styles that have cupcake style design that allows for the light to come in and not block sensitive areas. So I just wanted to touch on that point. And I became aware that members of the council have been polled on this issue in a social media kind of aspect way. So we are fielding some pressure from public at this point, but we do have some rules of governance we have to abide by. So just a reminder.
Any further comments? Deputy Mayor.
Just real quick, I really like that language of housing solutions. I know that the House bill is middle housing, but I think housing solutions is the truth of what we're talking about. Thank you.
Any further comments? All right. Staff feel like they have what they need?
We'll be back in January.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for your work.
Thank you.
Next up, North King County severe winter weather shelter funding presented by Assistant to the City Manager, Garrett Oppenheim. I am actually going to be recusing myself from this discussion. So I'll hand this over to the Deputy Mayor.
Information, what's the basis of it?
Well, the severe weather shelter funding, I believe, is going to KCRHA, where I'm employed. So
Hello again, everyone.
Welcome.
So I'm here to talk about the severe winter weather shelter and request some funding for that. So going. First of all, I want to just give a little bit of the history of the North King County winter shelters. For the last few years, this has been housed at St. Dunstan's Church in Shoreline. They've been activating it when the forecast calls for 4 or more hours of 32 degrees or below, or 2+ inches of snow. They generally, well, they're supposed to make that decision by 9 a.m. and they generally make it the previous night, whether they're going to open or not. The service has been volunteer run. The volunteers clean it every morning. The guests would arrive between 7:30 and 8 p.m. and everyone had to be gone by 7:30. At the end of the season, I believe it was the city of Shoreline that was paying for a professional cleaning of the venue. And this past year, they were at their capacity, which leads us to this next slide. It's just become too much for volunteers to run this. So the 5 North King County cities that are teamed in this interlocal agreement, which is Kenmore, Shoreline, Woodinville, Bothell, and Lake Forest Park, are teaming with the King County Regional Homelessness Authority to find a service provider who can do this. Each partner city is set to contribute funds for a total of up to $109,844. And on this slide, you can see how that breaks down, with the Homelessness Authority contributing $50,000. The city of Shoreline expected to contribute $25,000. Lake Forest Park has contributed $16,344. Bothell has committed $8,000 and Woodinville has committed $3,500. And then you see that we're requesting $7,000 from the $250,000 in human services funding that was authorized last May. So yeah. On this slide, we can see what the RFP that the Homelessness Authority has issued is asking for. They're suggesting that providers must be able to offer safe, dignified overnight emergency shelter to unhoused adults, provide adequate staffing, supplies, and response to emergency conditions while fostering health and safety, provide services grounded in a housing-first, trauma-informed holistic support, serve adults of all genders who are over the age of 18, and advance equity for Black, Indigenous, and other peoples of color, individuals who identify as LGBTQ+, and individuals with disabilities. So this $7,000 request you can expect a similar request next year for this program. These funds, like I said, would be coming out of the ARPA Human Services funding, which I can say right now still has $23,084 remaining from that original $250,000 allotment. $225,341 has been committed to the Center for Human Services Mental and Behavioral Health Program that is operating out of Inglemoor High School. And about $1,600 was expended in creating the Kenmore Cares mental health kits, which we saw last week and are available at City Hall front desk and the Senior Center. After this current biennium, the hope is that the Homelessness Authority will be able to fund the program through the allotments that the partner cities will be making for homelessness programs. So we are requesting that you'll authorize the $7,000 to go to this program. If there are any questions, I'll take this now.
Councilmember Baker.
Yes, this seems to be temporary money. What is going to happen next year when they come and ask for another 7,000, or the year after that?
So next year, if the same contribution was requested and we could do it from the ARPA funds again, there would still be $9,084 left of that $250,000 authorization from last May. And then, as I mentioned, going forward, the hope is that the authority will be able to pay for this program using the allotments that each of the 5 cities has committed to making, which is, I think, about $1.30 per capita. That may not be the exact right number, but it's somewhere in that range.
Okay, so it could be iffy if this is going to be available in 2 years.
Yes, I think that's fair.
Thank you.
Councilmember Shrubnik.
Yeah, this is, I don't have any problem with the 7,000 or even more, but I was curious when, and I should have asked this earlier, but the table that shows all the cities and their allocations, how are they derived? I mean, I'm guessing Lake Forest Park is higher because they haven't spent much thus far on homelessness, but I mean, you know, we're pretty close to Bothell, but Bothell's double our population. And I mean, so I was just trying to figure out how were these derived?
Those are fair questions. So the Lake Forest Park, my understanding is that in the past, they have not spent money on homelessness services. And so the $16,000 was their allotment to the authority for this year. And it's all going to this program. I don't know how the other cities derived how much they were spending. I'm sorry.
Councilmember File.
Thank you. So this is such an important need for our community, and we are a portion of the responsible pathway. We absolutely have to serve our community. One of the things I see in the lineup of what comes ahead after this year is reflective of a recent meeting that Councilwoman Susan Delbene just held a couple weeks ago. And emergency funding for adverse weather shelters has become available both through the federal pathway and for state pathways, and those application periods are now open. I hope that we can, through our Housing and Human Services kind of lens, look at this as a longer term need because of climate change and homelessness. So I just wanted to make that statement. So the information is clear. I passed it along, of course, to executive staff. So there's access to those materials already. Thank you.
Do we have any further questions or comments? Seeing no questions or, Councilmember Kugler?
I don't have any questions. I was just going to make a motion that
Oh,
we
I was,
approve
yeah,
this.
I was just, do we have a motion to approve the contribution of $7,000 from the 250,000 American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA? Human. Is there a second?
Second.
With a motion and a second, clerk, can you please take the roll?
Thank you. On the motion to approve contributions of $7,000 from the $250,000 of American Rescue Plan Act Human Services Funding Program for North King County Severe Winter Weather Shelter, and noting that Mayor Herbig has recused himself and will not render a vote, Councilmember Shrubnik.
Yes.
Councilmember Marshall.
Yes.
Councilmember File.
Yes.
Councilmember Kugler.
Yes.
Councilmember Baker.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Kane.
Yes.
All in favor, the motion passes.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Oppenheim.
Thank you.
We'll call back Mr. Mayor.
Staff reports.
So what I'd like to do is see if we can finalize the plans for Thursday night's town hall meeting. And last night I handed out the plan. Last Monday, I handed out the plan. And so hopefully you've gotten a chance to look at it and think about it, and here it's up on the screen again. Tell me what you want to do. Do you like it as is, or do you want to make any changes?
Speak now or forever hold your peace. All right, without objection, I think we're good.
Okay, sounds good. Also, we're learning along with our residents that CADMAN, or whatever they're called now, is up and running, and we're trying to figure out why. And we're going to try to put out a public statement just to keep the public informed, because not everybody's in the loop right now, including us. So we're gonna, if they failed their test and the results of their recent testing aren't in, how is it possible for them to be up and running? That's a question we have. So stay tuned on that.
Council member reports and comments. Councilmember Baker.
Don't have anything.
Councilmember Marshall.
Nothing to report.
Councilmember Kugler.
I also don't have anything to report tonight. Thank you.
Councilmember Shribnick.
Nothing to add, thanks.
Councilmember File.
Thank you. I want to give a little, quite a small little update. I attended Woodmore Elementary's PTA meeting and gave a little update on the work we're doing at on our sidewalk plan. And some interest there, of course. They're planning to circle back around and re-advocate for their community.
Sorry, did you say, you said Woodmore?
I did, didn't I?
Just
Morelands. Yeah, I had, it's
That makes more
another, it's getting late. Additionally with that, it was a good conversation, good meeting. They were very receptive. Also met with Amazon to talk about, Kenmore and what we're doing here in Kenmore, and also get an update of their interests because they're engaging with our community a little bit more frequently, and they have a number of folks who live in our North End area, and especially here in Kenmore. Turns out one of their interests is transportation and safe transportation. So I'm passing that along. But other than that, I just really appreciate everyone. It's been a good meeting and I'm looking forward to our next.
Deputy Mayor.
I have a few updates. First, one of the wonderful things, actually, how do I say this? We had our first in-person meeting for RIA 8 last Thursday. And at the end of the meeting, we went to the River Bend project, which is on the Cedar River. And it's an incredible restoration project. I won't go too deep in the detail, but one of the interesting facts was it was so well managed by the contractors responsible for the plants. They planted 70,000 plants. And of those 70,000, only 300 died, which are 369 or something, but such a small percentage. Seeing that space activated and come to life for the environment was really powerful and really informative for things that we may be able to do here in Kenmore. Another piece with that meeting, we reviewed the legislative agenda, and I did volunteer for the RIA 8 legislative agenda, federal and state legislative agenda committee. So I'm really excited to be participating in that, and I hope that that helps inspire bringing more funds to this important work of salmon habitat restoration. One more thing, as a city on Lake Washington and the Sammamish River, one of the presentations, I just want to put this on our radar as we're moving forward, was on Allen, which is artificial light at night and how that impacts salmon, especially baby salmon, their eating habits and predation. So let me remember, I believe it was Issaquah or Sammamish, I can't recall, but there is a city that did just recently put forward a ordinance that the city of Kenmore may wish to emulate or copy in the future. So that was just, for me, it was a really wonderful meeting, and I'm very thankful that I was able to participate in it. I'm just going to switch a little bit to public comment, and something that I think it's really important that we as a city, and that this does relate to RIA 8, it's about our water. And we're hearing too many concerns about what's in our water, and I think they come from a reasonable place. And our community deserves to know what's going on in our water. We don't know. We need to have some form of education about the testing, who's responsible for what, and its safety. I'm actually incredibly concerned about the safety of the water on Lake Washington in particular. So I would really like to learn more and make sure that our community's needs are heard. We can't live without water. We can't save salmon without water. Our climate action, all of these things that we take pride in can't happen without clean water. And so I'd love to have our community more informed about what we can do and the health of our water. Really incredible. Oh, and when we get the toxicology report for the sturgeon, I think it's really important for our community, our city, to make public, maybe in a newsletter or something, what that looks like. It was such a big story for us. City Manager, thank you for bringing up the asphalt plant and your follow-up that you're doing on that. Not only our community genuinely appreciates that. I think that covered everything. Great meeting this evening. It was rich. Thank you all.
Nothing much to add. I will say that last week, what day was it? Thursday, I did tune into the Plymouth Housing community engagement meeting that they held about the affordable housing that we're partnering with them. I think they did a great job presenting what they were doing and answering what questions did come up. So I appreciate their partnership and doing outreach to the community. Nothing more to come before us. Kenmore City Council is adjourned.